Caledonian forest was, and still is, a unique habitat.
Transcend the separation between species, the separation between people, and recognize that in our essence,
It's hard to see this now, but most of Scotland used to look empty, almost lifeless. No thick forests, barely any wildlife, just open land that had clearly lost something. So Scotland made a decision most countries wouldn't even attempt. They gave themselves 250 years to rebuild a lost forest. It sounded almost ridiculous. 35 years later, something unexpected happened. The land didn't just begin to recover, it started responding in ways no one had planned for. And that wasn't even the most surprising part: the illusion of wild Scotland. 9,000 years ago, after the last ice age ended, Scotland was a completely different place. As the glaciers retreated, the land warmed, and life returned in a rush. Scots pines began spreading across the highlands, their roots carrying ancient genetic lines that had survived millennia. Around them, birch, hazel, rowan, and aspen grew, while higher up the slopes, hardy species like dwarf birch and woolly willow clung to the cold mountainsides. It wasn't a simple patch of trees, it was a complex living system. Tall pines formed a canopy that shaded everything below. Shrubs filled the gaps. Wildflowers carpeted the forest floor. And beneath it all, roots and fungi connected the ecosystem like a hidden underground network. Every layer depended on the other, forming one of the most vibrant and diverse forests in Europe. This forest wasn't just a collection of trees. It was home to countless animals, insects, and plants that existed nowhere else in Britain. Birds nested in the canopy, small mammals found shelter in the undergrowth, and insects buzzed, pollinated, and recycled nutrients through the soil. The forest's richness shaped the land itself, stabilizing soil, controlling water flow, and creating a resilient, self-sustaining ecosystem. Pollen records show that the Caledonian forest once covered large areas of Scotland, supporting life that thrived in ways humans could barely imagine. But humans arrived, and the balance started to shift. At first, the impact was small. Early communities cleared only what they needed for farming and settlements. Nature usually recovered, slowly filling the gaps left behind. But over time, the pressure grew. Populations increased, and land was cleared at a faster pace. Vikings, Romans, and later medieval farmers all took their share. Wood was cut for homes and fuel, and land was cleared for crops and grazing. Each act may have seemed harmless on its own, but collectively, they began to change the landscape permanently. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the destruction reached a scale that few could have anticipated. Landowners cleared vast tracts of forest for profit, not necessity. Sheep farming expanded across the highlands, consuming the land and limiting what could grow naturally. Villagers were displaced, and whole communities vanished as estates reshaped the environment to serve human needs. Then came another force that would seal the forest's fate: red deer.
That problem. There are no natural predators for deer, so that means we have to go out and cull them.
Deer stalking became fashionable among landowners, and to create the perfect hunting grounds, deer herds were allowed to explode in numbers, by some estimates reaching nearly 1 million. Those herds had a devastating effect. Red deer don't just graze on grass. They eat the tiny seedlings that could one day become towering trees. Every new tree that tried to grow was nipped in its earliest stages, leaving the forest without young trees to replace the old ones. Slowly, regeneration stopped. The forest didn't vanish in a single dramatic event. Instead, it withered gradually until it could no longer recover on its own. The consequences rippled across the land. Soil that had been enriched and held together by dense roots began to erode. Rainwater, no longer absorbed by trees, ran faster across hills and valleys, increasing the risk of floods. Species that had relied on dense woodland disappeared, unable to find food or shelter. The highlands, which appear so natural and open to the eye today, are in many ways an artificial landscape. a product of centuries of human activity combined with ecological collapse. Only a few fragments of the original Caledonian forest remain. Places like Glen Affric hold ancient pines that have stood for centuries, twisted and weathered, silent witnesses to a once thriving ecosystem. These pockets are precious, reminders of what the land could support, and proof that life once existed in a richness that the modern highlands can hardly hint at. But across much of the region, the forest's disappearance has left barren hills, heather-covered slopes, and open spaces that conceal the ecological devastation beneath. The bold 250-year vision. In the mid-1980s, while most people had given up on the idea of restoring Scotland's ancient forests, a young gardener named Alan Watson Featherstone quietly began to imagine something almost impossible. Alan wasn't a celebrity, a scientist with a lab, or a government official. He was someone who simply loved trees, someone who felt the pain of empty hills and missing wildlife as deeply as if it were personal. And in 1986, he took a step that would change everything. At the Findhorn Foundation conference, Alan stood before a room full of delegates and said something that made heads turn. While most conservation plans aimed for quick wins, measured in a few years or a decade at most, Alan proposed a timeline most people could barely comprehend. He promised to restore the Caledonian forest, but not in 5 years, not in 50, over 250 years. His plan stretched all the way to 2236. The room went quiet. 2.5 centuries seemed unimaginable, yet Alan spoke with calm conviction, as if centuries were just another unit of time, like minutes on a clock. The boldness wasn't in the words alone, it was in what came next. That same year, Alan founded Trees for Life. It started small.
I founded Trees for Life when I was a member of the Findhorn community here in the northeast of Scotland.
Volunteers, ordinary people who cared, traveled into remote glens with nothing more than shovels, spades, and hope. They planted saplings by hand, one at a time, in small fenced enclosures. The fences weren't to show off or make a statement. They were to protect each young tree from hungry deer. Every seedling mattered, every effort counted, and every day the volunteers learned patience. Fast results weren't the goal. This was about letting nature do what it does best, but with a little help from humans willing to wait. By 1993, Trees for Life had grown into an independent charity. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't headline-grabbing, but it was persistent. Alan and his team expanded their work to multiple sites, planting more trees, monitoring progress, and learning from each season. They measured success not by immediate change, but by survival rates of saplings and the slow return of wildlife. The focus was always patience, always long-term thinking. Unlike most conservation projects, which tried to push nature into a pre-planned shape, Alan's approach was almost philosophical. Work with the forest, not against it. Then came 2008, a year that would mark the turning point of the project. Trees for Life purchased the Dundragon Estate, a vast 10,000-acre property near Loch Ness. Previously, Dundragon had been managed for deer stalking, its rolling hills shaped by human hunting priorities rather than ecological balance. It was a bold, almost audacious leap. Dundragon became Trees for Life's flagship site, the place where Alan's vision could truly unfold. Here, experiments in forest restoration could happen at scale. Volunteers fenced saplings, monitored wildlife, and observed how ecosystems responded over seasons and years. It became a hub for learning, for teaching, and for demonstrating that patient, careful human effort could begin to reverse centuries of loss. Every tree planted wasn't just a sapling. It was a signal that the highlands could heal. Every deer-proof enclosure wasn't just protection. It was an investment in the forest's future. What makes this story remarkable isn't just the scale, it's the mindset behind it. Alan refused to chase headlines or quick publicity. He focused on consistency, on respect for natural processes, on letting the forest grow at its own pace. And slowly, the impossible began to seem possible. Trees survived, shrubs spread, birds began to return. The land started whispering hints of life that hadn't been heard in centuries. Alan's quiet leadership inspired others. Donors, volunteers, and staff all rallied around a vision that most people couldn't grasp. They were motivated not by fame, not by awards, but by the understanding that they were part of something far bigger than themselves, a project that would outlive them, that would take centuries to complete. Every step forward was tiny, almost invisible to the casual observer. But each step was also monumental when measured in the scale of time Alan had imagined. Alan's transformation of Dundregan into a living laboratory resulted in the creation of more than just a forest improvement project. Through his creation of a symbol, he demonstrated that it was possible for humans to make a commitment not only to the next few years, but also to the next few centuries. One that serves as a reminder that one may accomplish what appeared to be impossible with patience, perseverance, and respect for nature. However, despite the fact that Dundregan is performing exceptionally well as a rewilding center, Alan never promised rapid results. He was aware that the forest would expand at a gradual pace. He was well aware that it could take decades for wildlife to recover in quantities that were significant. He was aware that a significant portion of Scotland's countryside was still sensitive. Nevertheless, he was also aware that the only way the Caledonian forest could ever be re-established was if the first trees were planted, the first enclosures were constructed, and a plan was established that would last for 250 years. And even though there were still centuries more to go on the project, Alan Watson, Featherstone's vision had already started to transform the way people thought about environmentally friendly practices. The issue was not one of speed. In the short term, fame was not the focus. It was about thinking in centuries, behaving with care, and having faith that nature would respond if it were given the opportunity. The most audacious part? This was just the beginning of things. 2 million trees and the power of protection. Nearly 2 million native trees have gone into the soil, including Scots pine, downy birch, rowan, aspen, juniper, and even the tiniest mountain specialists like dwarf birch and woolly willow. Some of these species hadn't grown here in decades, and now they're slowly reclaiming the land.
Scotland's landscapes are dramatic, large open spaces, and for some it's considered wild. But these landscapes, although vast...
But the real secret to success isn't the planting itself, it's protection. Red deer, whose numbers exploded in Scotland after centuries of forest loss, would eat nearly every young tree before it could grow. The solution? Deer-proof fences. Simple, but incredibly effective. On one side, the land looks barren, windswept, almost lifeless. Step just a few meters inside the fence, and it's like the earth has remembered what it's supposed to be. Birch and pine seedlings erupt in dense growth, creating a woodland that seems to appear almost overnight. It's not magic, it's nature remembering itself. The soil, even after centuries of grazing, still holds seeds from ancient trees. Birds and wind bring more, and suddenly, the land has the chance to rebuild. The fenced areas aren't meant to stay isolated. They're starting points. Each protected patch expands, and over time, these pockets link together to form a continuous, resilient woodland. Trees for Life didn't stop at fences. They used assisted natural regeneration, letting the land do most of the work. Volunteers monitor growth, remove invasive plants, and ensure young saplings survive. But they don't force the forest. Instead, they give it space, protection, and time, letting nature guide the restoration. And the difference is incredible. Hillsides that were empty just a few years ago now sway with young trees, a vibrant mix of greenery stretching in every direction. Over time, the fenced plots grow and merge. Seedlings spread beyond their enclosures, connecting with neighboring forests. The forest isn't forced. It's learning to heal itself, to rebuild what humans had altered. Soil stabilizes, streams run clearer, and biodiversity begins to return. Insects arrive first, then birds. and soon mammals like pine martens and roe deer return, filling the forest with movement and sound once more. The power of patience shows in every sapling. Each tree contributes not just shade or wood, but a ripple effect through the ecosystem. Roots hold soil, shrubs enrich it, and as trees grow, they create habitats for countless species. What was once empty land now hums with life, demonstrating that restoration doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be consistent and carefully guided. And here's the most exciting part. This is just the beginning. Even with 2 million trees planted, the forest is still young, fragile, and only starting to take its place across the highlands. Each year adds new growth, new habitats, and new life. What Trees for Life has done isn't just planting trees. It's starting a legacy, a living network of forest that could one day stretch across Scotland, helping nature recover and thrive again. The Underground Revolution. Beneath every tree in Dundragon, an invisible network is at work, connecting the forest in ways most people never see. Scientists call it the Wood Wide Web. Tiny threads of fungi wrap around tree roots, forming a hidden internet that moves water, minerals, and nutrients from one tree to another. In exchange for sugar from leaves, the fungi deliver essential resources that roots alone could not reach. These threads also allow trees to share warnings. If one tree is attacked by insects or suffers from drought, others can prepare for the threat. Every tree, shrub, and plant is connected in this underground web, forming a living communication network. For centuries, this network had been damaged. The ancient Caledonian forests were cut down, grazed by sheep and red deer, or destroyed during centuries of human activity. The soil weakened, and the fungal threads became fragmented. Most trees that sprouted never survived because grazing animals ate the young seedlings. This slow destruction left the highlands appearing empty above ground, while below, the underground network struggled to survive. When Trees for Life began planting new trees and protecting them from deer, the fungi responded faster than anyone expected. Areas that had been barren for generations began to bloom. Seedlings that would normally have been eaten survived. Birch and pine saplings grew thickly inside fenced enclosures, while outside the fences, the land remained mostly open. The contrast was dramatic. It showed how critical protection is and how the underground network can help forests recover once given a chance. The Wood Wide Web does more than just support individual trees. It links the entire ecosystem together. Nutrients and water move through the fungi, feeding not only young trees but also shrubs, wildflowers, and even soil microbes. Soil that had once been fragile and nutrient-poor begins to store more water and carbon, which helps the forest survive harsh weather. When trees grow stronger, insects, birds, and mammals return, creating a vibrant web of life that depends on the underground connections. This network also accelerates forest recovery in unexpected ways. Scientists once believed that it would take hundreds of years for these fungal connections to rebuild after centuries of destruction. Instead, they returned within decades. Seeds carried by wind or birds found fertile ground protected by young trees. The network transferred nutrients from older trees to younger ones, giving the saplings a better chance to grow tall and strong. Areas that looked empty just a few years earlier transformed into thick, thriving woodland. The forest begins to act like a living community. Each tree is part of a team, sharing resources and helping neighbors survive. Fungi link roots to roots, creating underground pathways that deliver water and nutrients even during dry periods. Soil becomes healthier, storing carbon and improving structure. This makes the forest more resilient to storms, droughts, and other challenges. Slowly, the young woodlands start to resemble the ancient forests that once dominated the highlands, not just in appearance, but in function. The story of the Wood Wide Web also reveals the impact of long-term human effort. Volunteers who planted trees decades ago can now see the results. A sapling that struggled in the 1990s might now be part of a dense patch of trees that supports thousands of species. The underground network allows the forest to remember how to be a forest, Even rare fungi, insects, and high-altitude plants return once the conditions are right. The forest's recovery is not only visible above ground, but also thriving below, forming a complex, interconnected system that will continue to grow for generations. This hidden network transforms barren land into a self-healing ecosystem. Trees, fungi, plants, and soil microbes all play roles in rebuilding the forest. Water and nutrients flow through the fungal threads, reaching trees that need them most. Soil becomes rich and fertile again, and young trees gain strength from older neighbors. Over time, small patches of forest join together, creating continuous woodland. This connectivity is vital for wildlife, allowing animals to move safely and find food, shelter, and breeding grounds. By reconnecting the fungi, the forest accelerates its own recovery. Areas once thought permanently barren now host thriving ecosystems. Soil, water, and nutrients move efficiently. Young trees survive, and the landscape begins to resemble the forests that dominated Scotland 9,000 years ago. The underground web binds every living thing, from soil microbes to canopy birds, into a single thriving system. The forest is not just growing, it is communicating, recovering, and rebuilding at a pace that defies expectations. The Golden Eagle milestone. Nothing shows how far Dundragon has come quite like the return of Scotland's golden eagles. These massive birds, with wingspans stretching over 2 meters and eyes sharp enough to spot a hare from a cliff.
In Scandinavia, golden eagles live in the mountains and the lowlands. They are capable hunters.
Had vanished from the estate for decades. By the 1980s, Dundragon simply didn't offer what they needed. The trees were too sparse, prey too few, and safe nesting spots almost non-existent. For years, the skies were empty of these legendary raptors, a silent reminder of what had been lost. Then came 2015, a year that quietly set the stage for something extraordinary. Trees for Life teamed up with Roy Dennis, one of the world's most respected raptor specialists, to build an artificial eyrie, a man-made nest perched high on a cliff, roughly 15 meters above the ground. The design was careful and deliberate, modeled after a disused natural nest with sturdy branches and a sheltered platform. It aimed to make the eagles feel at home. But even with this perfect perch, the nest remained empty. Year after year, volunteers and scientists watched, waited, and hoped. Patience was the rule. Rewilding doesn't follow human schedules. It moves in generations, not months. While the trees grew taller and saplings became young forests, the smaller animals returned first. Black grouse flitting through new woodland, red squirrels darting among branches, pine martens silently exploring the undergrowth. Each creature signaled that the ecosystem was healing, quietly setting the stage for the top predator to follow. Then, in the summer of 2020, everything changed. A pair of golden eagles finally claimed the artificial eyrie. For the first time in 40 years, a chick was successfully raised at Dundragon. The sight of the young eagle taking its first flight was more than a milestone. It was proof that the long-term vision was working. Trees that had been tiny saplings in the 1990s now formed safe cover. Prey populations had rebounded. The forest, once silent and empty, now buzzed with life and opportunity for these apex predators. The return of a golden eagle isn't just about one bird or one nest. It signals that the foundation of the ecosystem is strong. Raptors sit at the top of the food chain. They only come back when the forest below can support them. Healthy prey, diverse undergrowth, and stable nesting areas all had to exist first. The eagle's presence confirmed that Dundragon's food web, from insects to small mammals to forest birds, was thriving again. The impact spread quickly. Woodland birds, once rare, began multiplying. Red squirrels, once absent from many parts of the highlands, found corridors of safety through the expanding forest. Pine martens, stealthy predators of the undergrowth, started appearing more frequently. Each species' return reinforced the others, creating a web of life that could sustain itself. Estate managers and volunteers describe the moment with awe. Doug Gilbert, who oversees Dundragon, called the chicks' fledging beyond our wildest dreams. Experts agreed. It wasn't just a single success. It was proof that patient rewilding could restore even a heavily altered landscape. What took decades to plan and plant finally allowed nature to move forward on its own terms. The golden eagle's return also provides hope for other regions. It demonstrates that ecosystems can recover if people give them the right conditions and enough time. Artificial interventions, like the cliff nest, help tip the balance, but it's the slow, consistent recovery of the forest that made the victory possible. The eagles didn't just appear out of nowhere. They followed the forest, the prey, and the hidden networks that had quietly rebuilt beneath the surface for decades. By 2020, the skies above Dundragon were no longer empty. The eagle's flight became a symbol of patience, perseverance, and vision. From cliff-top perch to treetop hunting grounds, the species was reclaiming its territory. Other golden eagles have started exploring nearby areas, hinting at future recolonization across the highlands. Every beat of their wings tells a story of recovery, from the forest floor to the canopy, from insects to apex predators. Life is returning in layers. The milestone also reinforces the principle that conservation isn't just about planting trees or protecting a patch of land. It's about rebuilding a network that allows nature to thrive at every level. When the base of the ecosystem, the soil, plants, and small animals, is healthy, the apex species naturally return. The golden eagle is proof that patient, careful rewilding works, and it offers a glimpse of what's possible if the forest is given centuries to heal and grow. Challenges and hope. The ripple of life at Dundragon reaches far beyond the trees themselves. As young forests take hold, birds are returning in numbers unseen for decades. Black grouse stride across newly wooded glens, their dark feathers catching the sunlight. Red squirrels, once shy and scarce, dart along the branches, while pine martens, quiet and elusive, patrol the forest floor. Even tiny woodland insects, long missing, are reappearing, buzzing among the mosses and flowers. Each creature signals that the ecosystem is healing, layer by layer, from soil microbes to flying predators. The forest isn't just growing, it's remembering how to function as a complete, living system. Humans are part of this story too, in ways both practical and inspiring. In April 2023, Trees for Life opened the world's first dedicated rewilding center at Dundragon. This wasn't just another visitor attraction. The center acts as a gateway to the estate, offering walks, educational exhibits, and hands-on opportunities to explore the rewilding process. Tens of thousands of visitors come every year, learning how forests, rivers, and wildlife can recover when nature is given space and time. It's a place where people witness firsthand what centuries-long dedication can achieve, and where excitement for the natural world is contagious. The center also brings tangible benefits to local communities. Between 30 and 50 new jobs have been created, from guides to nursery workers, supporting families and connecting people with the land. Local businesses benefit as visitors arrive to explore trails, eat at cafes, or stay in nearby accommodations. But perhaps most importantly, Dundragon is weaving Scotland's cultural heritage back into the land. Gaelic language, traditional stories, and ancient knowledge about forests and wildlife are integrated into the visitor experience, helping younger generations reconnect with the land their ancestors once relied on. This blending of ecology and culture shows that rewilding isn't just about trees and animals, it's about people remembering their place in the world around them. Even with these successes, challenges remain. Red deer populations across Scotland are still high. Without natural predators like wolves or lynx, grazing pressure can prevent young trees from surviving. So fences and careful management remain essential. Climate change adds a new layer of uncertainty. Hotter, drier summers and unpredictable weather can stress young trees, making long-term planning even more critical. And because Dundregan is only one part of the Highlands, cooperation with neighboring landowners and conservation groups is necessary to ensure that the forest can expand beyond isolated patches into a continuous, resilient ecosystem. Despite these hurdles, the progress is undeniable. Every sapling that survives, every bird that returns, and every visitor who leaves inspired strengthens the momentum. Dundregan has become more than a forest. It's a laboratory of hope, proving that ecosystems can recover when humans step back, support the land, and think long-term. Lessons from this project are already inspiring other restoration efforts across Scotland and beyond, showing that patience, care, and vision can lead to real, lasting change. The human and cultural ripples are as important as the ecological ones. Dundregan shows that conservation can create jobs, teach skills, and reconnect people with the land while also healing ecosystems. Visitors experience more than just beautiful scenery. They witness what patience and dedication can achieve over decades. Local communities see economic benefits and cultural revitalization as the Gaelic language and stories return to the forest alongside wildlife. Together, humans and nature are rebuilding a landscape long thought lost, creating a model for restoration that blends heritage, sustainability, and shared stewardship. From the return of red squirrels and black grouse to the opening of the Rewilding Center, Dundregan demonstrates that one place can generate change far beyond its borders. The young forest and its human allies show what's possible when patience meets purpose. Visitors leave not only with memories of wildlife and trails, but with a renewed sense of connection to nature and hope for a wilder, healthier Scotland. Here, culture, community, and nature are deeply intertwined, each strengthening the other and inspiring future efforts in conservation and restoration. The forest is growing, the animals are returning, and people are learning how to live alongside it. Challenges remain, yes, but the momentum is clear. The ripples created at Dundregan reach far beyond the estate, hinting at a future where restored forests, thriving wildlife, and human communities coexist in harmony. It's a story of hope, persistence, and vision, showing that what starts as a single project can inspire generations, both human and wild, for centuries to come. Outro Scotland pulled off the impossible. After 35 years, the lost Caledonian forest is coming back. Golden eagles are soaring again, and wildlife is thriving like never before. This isn't just nature, it's a 250-year plan in action, and the results are breathtaking. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to follow this epic forest comeback.